Today's project is putting in a mini split in our basement. These are incredibly efficient, according to the reviews, right? And according to the amperage ratings, etc. And I got a deal on this one that couldn't be refused. So this is for my basement in particular. So the deal I got on it was an AUX unit, which is one of the biggest manufacturers. I should say several brands then put their label on it. So this is identical to several that you would find, but AUX, probably one of the top 3 manufacturers. And this one's a 115 unit, 115 volt unit. It came just like this. Take the straps off and lift the box up. And then this padding was on top that I just removed. The 2 coolant lines are strapped to the sides here for the packing. And then one of the most important things that you'll want to look at when you're sizing everything is this label that is on the side of these. And some of the important numbers you want to pay attention to is the minimum capacity ampacity and also the input amperage. So the MCA on this one is 13.2. Get a closer look. And then the total input current is 11, so that's what it could be running at full load, but that gives you room to for your startup and everything like that. 13.2. They're recommending the fuse or breaker be a 20 amp in this case. Let's take off the top. Like I said, it came with all the necessary hookups and wires. Those were just hanging over the sides. Here's your valves. I just opened up the indoor portion. Very well packed. Remote control came in it. I laid it aside. This wall bracket comes off by taking that single screw out. And this is the cord that will run out to the outside, so this unit gets its power from the outside unit. And then the hoses that need to be fished through the wall are here and this other one. So I'm going to take a look at that and make sure that they'll go through the pipe that I plan to put that through. Alright, so this is where I'm going to put my unit. In here I have a tray ceiling, so I'm going to leave at least 6 inches at the top, and that's per the instructions. But you know what, they said 8.2 feet off the floor? Who can leave 8.2 feet off the floor? That's got to be some kind of weird math error. It actually even says it stuck on the side of the unit to make sure that it's 8.2 feet off the floor. I don't know what the logic in that is, but I don't have 8.2 feet. I've got about 6.5 feet, so it's going to be what it is. From the bottom of the unit, by the way. If they're measuring from the top of the unit, then it'd be closer. But that bracket, there's no template that comes with the model that I got, Yitahome. Some of the other ones that AUX makes comes with a template, so I made my own template. You can see I sketched out the bracket, but what I'm about to show you will keep you from probably having to make a template. I put this in a stud. Of course, this is not 16 inches on center. I wish the bracket was. I don't know what their homes in China are spaced, but I put 2 anchors in here on this side and 2 anchors that are purported to hold 70 pounds each, and this thing is not even, even 30 pounds. And I used these expandable anchors that come out of here, and so considering I put 2 in there, that's 140 pounds that those 2 should hold. Plus I've got these 2 in the stud. I could have put one here, but I tugged on this and it is secure in here. I have determined actually to put it at 1.25 inches from this height, and still 2.5 inches out from the edge, which is about 3.25 inches to the center, but 2.5 inches from the edge. So the next step I did was I took my drill that has a built-in level on it, and I made sure it was about half a bubble off. And I'm all the way through the brick on the other side now as a pilot hole. If you'll notice, this goes slightly downhill. You probably can't tell it here, but it goes slightly downhill. Use my masonry bit. Could use a hole saw, regular hole saw, but I already had this one for the, just out. Of course, it'll go through that as well. The one that's meant for brick, but the one that's meant for wood will go through there like butter. So I've got this side in. I've got some insulation and some plastic to deal with right here, but not much. I've already put the pilot through, so I'm going to go the other side. Like a lot of things, I decided to work on something at nighttime. You can see the pilot hole. I already got a good start at going through my brick. And this is a hammer drill. Hammer drill meaning it, will give you that vibration as it goes through. And so this is not as deep as the brick. So what you have to do is you have to chip some out and then keep going. I'm almost through it. Almost through it. This is an estimation where I thought the hole would come out. Not too far off. Looks like I got it through, but I don't really want this inside the wall, so I'm going to try to get it out by going to the other side of the wall and tapping. Got my perfectly round hole all the way through. Things that really, come out, because that goes downhill and you're in a brick wall, that's not going to sit flush. Hopefully it gets covered up a good bit. I'm going to slide it in and see. Oh man, that gets covered up so good. Just perfect. I didn't press it to the wall to hook it in yet, but this does recess. So that measurement that I gave you will just barely get it under. So if you want to go just a slight hair higher than that, feel free, but mine works. Even after I cut this off, one of those copper hoses is too short in a thick wall like this, and my wall's thick, of course, because of the brick. All right, here's an update where we are. The warm side is, I believe this the bigger one. If I'm wrong, I'll update that. But it's not long enough to get through my brick wall. It's about that much too short. So if it were a few inches longer, it would be great. And this is ridiculous that they didn't make it longer, but I still got a good deal on the unit. I'm going to put, I've gone ahead and I've poked my same size back through here, and I'm going to make my connection there using Nylog as the sealant on there and everything. And then I'm gonna push all that through, pull everything back into the room here, and redo my connection here. And I've had to build a scaffolding. Time to do some sketchy stuff to hold this up temporarily so I can make that connection. I've got my two surfaces here. You want to inspect your flare, make sure there's no gouges in it or anything. It looks good. And then also inspect the receiving end here to use Nylog Blue. And that's the one that should be good for R32. And what it does, okay, is it lubricates and also helps seal the mating surfaces. So that, the flare is going to mate with that. So the most important part is that outer face and this outer face, but also you can put some right around here, apparently, to lubricate that as that spins when you tighten it up. So that's what we're going to do here, is we're going to take this and lightly put some here and lightly put some right here. I put some back behind the flare, right back there, and that gets it smoothed around. I didn't put it on the threads because I've read not to do that. I've got some on the face here, and they say a little dab will do you, and that's what we're going to trust in. Okay, I have finger tightened that, and then I'm going to use a combination of vice grips on the permanent soldered side and the sweated side, and then I'm going to use that. I don't have a torque wrench, adjustable wrench, nor am I going to buy one for this. But I'm going to do the old finger snug or snug and then a quarter of a turn trick, and a little prayer, and that'll be all it needs. So I got my line in here, and I got plenty of slack for my wires to make their connection. And I'm going to push all this back through the wall, hopefully hang it back on there and get my makeshift scaffolding out of place. Got that temporarily hooked on, but not pressed flat against the wall. And we'll go back on the other side and see what we look like there and pull it through just a little bit to tighten up the cords. Now you can see how that came out here. Tug on this, make sure the condensation line is near the bottom so it continues to flow. Pull that. Should be good. So that connection is right there at the tip of my finger, and I'll be able to take off some of this insulation and look at it again when I do my test. I did finish up my pad that I'm going to put it on. Did that yesterday, and it's level. I had an air conditioning pad on hand, so I'm not doing a wall mount, and it's up and level. It'll have enough distance between my central AC for the upstairs, and this one's going to be for the basement. There we go. Alright, now that I've got this against the wall, you can hook up your wires. And in this kit at least, they're numbered. You see that number 2 there? There's a tiny number 3 on the red one, and a number 1 right there on the black one. And of course that's ground. So 1, 2, 3, and ground. Simple as that. So we're going to get that retaining screw out of there and put it behind here and then wire that up. So that's it. Just as easy as 1, 2, 3, 4. You just match up those numbers and put them right on those terminals. 1, 2, 3, and 4 being the ground. So I'm going to put a disconnect here. So the mini split's here on the opposite side of that wall, and now I'm going to put in a dedicated line, a 12 gauge line and a 20 amp breaker off the main box. But as you can see, finished ceilings here and everything because I'm in the basement. That's drywall. The wire that you just saw is on the other side of this wall. For my liquid tight whip, I thought it best to come out of the bottom. I was going to come out the side, but I put a knockout plug back in there, come out the bottom, be more watertight. Plus, this liquid tight kit that I got for the whip had a straight fitting here and then had a elbow there, and the elbow is going to work better to go in to the side, so that's what I did. This is a 110 setup, and all I did was wired the hot side here and the neutral over here, and I'm using red for the neutral. Black matches black, and that's my ground. So normally in a 210 situation, 220 situation, you would end up with a hot leg here, and the ground. A hot leg here, a hot leg here, and the ground, yeah. And then, but since this is a different setup for, you know, a 110, 115, whatever you want to call it, that's the way that works. If you didn't know how to disconnect work, it simply just connects those 2 legs together and those 2 legs together. Do that one piece, do that one piece. So everything's disconnected. I guess there's another way to wire that if you wanted to tie your neutrals together and leave one of your legs blank, but this ensures the whole thing is not. I had that upside down. That's on. I should say that it does come with a supply line that's 14 gauge, which is way too thin for code. So I've got what you'd need is a 12 gauge. This one's 10 gauge that I got, so it's a little bigger than you actually need. I put new ends on it, in this case ring terminals, and you'll see that I flattened the sides of those ring terminals down because they have to fit in between those gaps right there. Your line goes there, your neutral goes there, and your ground goes there. We're all wired up now. See how I brought in these 3 right here? That was my line, that was my neutral, that was my ground. And those are going to my supply, in this case my 115. The cable that goes to the
to the indoor unit. And I had to cut these wires short so I didn't have such a long wire out here. The black one goes to number 1, the red one's number 3, the white one's number 2, and you'll see that I put heat shrink on there, as well as ring connectors. And I knew where they went because these have numbers on them, and it's got a rubber grommet that I'll push up in there. Got all that tidied up and the rubber grommet put in.
I decided to cut my lines because I'm not a fan of the big wound up line at the back end. So here's what I'm doing is I'm going to use the small tubing cutter to cut the lines. I've got some of the equipment needed to do that. I've got a flaring tool and a couple other things. So these lines came with ends already on them, but and that's easy enough to connect on the house end. The other end would need to be cut off and flared. Now some people say you should cut these off and flare them brand new at both ends, but my flares from the factory looked pretty good. So inspect your flares and see if they look good or not. So I'm going to cut these off, and then I'm going to flare them. The small tubing cutter gives you better control. I found sometimes it's best to go a turn and a half and then back the other way to keep it from spiraling, because you want it to cut and not spiral. So now the idea is that you need to slip this back on to your cut that you made down there, and then flare it. Have a flare that's coming out that's very clean, and I got a flaring tool that'll help me do that. So here's the flaring tool, and this is the type of flaring tool everybody says to use. This locks it in to the size that you need here. So the one that you line up, I believe, is a 1/4 inch that we're going to be using down there. And then you'll have your copper come up through here a little bit high, and there's an arrow in there that will set it in there. Sorry, I'm dealing with bright sunlight. There's an arrow in there that will come in there and ream it out to flare it. And you're wondering, how does this thing come off? How does it open up? And they all, I guess, do about the same way. Put it all the way to the end, and you see that's a hinge right there. And that looks like it's bolted through, but it's not on this side. You're going to spread it apart right here. Put your pipe in and then close it up. You don't need this to come all the way off like it just did, but this will give you a good look at what's going on in there. It's supposed to be a much better approach than, now to put it back on, you got to get that down to a point right there. Put it back on, you do that, close it. So now I've got this up here. The end that we're going to do, we want to go ahead and carefully ream this using these needle nose pliers that I ran sandpaper over so it's smooth. Of course, you can use a little reaming tool to do this too. Why my neighbor's always making noise? I'm going to face this down so it doesn't put that up in your tube. Use a little sanding block if your sandpaper's not thick enough. Facing that down so those shavings do not go up in. Putting that nut back on there. You don't want it too high, because if your flare is too big, you gotta redo the whole thing. I'm guessing that's about right. Slide that. See that? There's a mark there. Put that all the way to the side of it, and the other mark will be behind it. Now all this is doing is setting it, locking it into place. You haven't flared it yet. Now the flare comes in, and let's see if we can see what that looks like. See down in there? And this has what some people describe as a clutch in it. Making sure that's tight. That basically once it's flared, you can see it starting to flare, and then this handle will kind of pop. And just popped. And that way it's got that clutch that just turns loose. So, and you slide this back and take it out. And hope that you did it right. Nylog Blue, and I think I showed that on the other end, but you want to put that on the face of the flare, and then you also want to go down there and put it on the face of what it's going to contact, and it serves as an extra little gasket. And I'm going to tighten that down. We'll have one or two of them done, one of two of them done. You want to make sure that this is not binding when you put it on, not crooked or anything. Finger tighten it first, line it up where you're not forcing anything, and then take your adjustable wrench and tighten it. And if you got a torque, that's even better, but I don't have a torque one. Again, you know, if my head blocks this, I'm really sorry. And we're going to call that good. We're going to call that good. And we're going to say, hello, Mr. Caterpillar. You're going to make a nice monarch butterfly one day. We'll save you over there. Alright, so I did one, and then I'm going to do the other one. It's the same process. It's a bigger tube, same thing, so you know how to do it now. So everything's working, and then I started to buy the kit to get it done from Amazon and do it, and that was like $110 for the one at minimum that I was looking at. So then I remembered there's a guy, an HVAC guy that I'd met several months ago in the neighborhood across from me, literally a couple miles from me, and he said, I'll come over tomorrow. And so for like $80, hooked the vacuum up to this port and then vacuumed it down to, I think it's less than 500 microns. And I didn't do it, so you need to verify all that. And then to see if everything held, and he verified that the system was not leaking. And then he took the caps off and released the coolant into the system, and then he checked the levels. Because I'm using such a short tubing run, the copper tubing run, he thought maybe I'd be overpressured, but I'm not. Anyway, it's working great. Anchored it down with some screws that I had that are galvanized, and everything's going now. I'll probably tidy this up. It came with a big plug of putty that I'm going to put in here, and I'm going to seal that up, and then I'm going to run this over into my condensation line right there at the top. Here's the unit on the wall. This particular unit has a swing feature to where that will go up and down. The remote works, and turn it on. I actually have it in heat mode right now because it's still early spring in Georgia and my basement's a little chilly. So as you note there, it does that, and then that'll swing up and down a bit. This particular unit, for the side to side, you can do this, and it's got those little grooves right there. It'll pop into place if you want the side to side back in there to hold over that way, or that way it'll go pop, 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 or pop, pop, pop and hold. But some of the units actually have a motor attached in there too, so it can rotate, and you get an oscillating feature between those two. But this one has that, and I'm perfectly fine with that. So everything's going, everything's working. I think it came out great here. No wires exposed, not even tubing exposed here. It's up against the wall. The app is working. A little secret on the app there is that it would not attach to my home network. So what I did was I found in there, somebody gave a tip to take your home network name, SSID, and password, and create with another phone a temporary Wi-Fi access point and hold it up here and let it connect to that one. The same exact password and the same exact SSID as what is in your SSID for your house. And it connected to that just like that, and it was on. And then what you do is you take that offline and change that, do away with that little temporary SSID, and then it connects to the house. And so if you're running into that challenge, that's a quick fix for that. You can hear how quiet it is. So the high fan just kicked in. It's quieter than, well, it's as quiet as a dishwasher running in the kitchen. So I don't know. What does that make it? 50 something decibels is my estimate from my untrained ears. Let's see, overall review so far. This has been easy, somewhat easy to put in here. The only thing I wish they'd done is that one copper line that I had to put the connection up in the wall. If they had just made that just 5 inches longer, it would have made things so much better to have my connections on the outside, really 8 or 9 inches longer, so you could make the bend. I used that bending tool to do all that. And I think it came out nice and neat, and I'm glad to have it done. So if you're considering this one, or any AUX aux unit, such as Turbro or Costway, I can give it a thumbs up, especially if you're getting a good deal on it. Thanks for watching. Like, share, subscribe.